There are almost as many different ways to feed chickens as there are breeds of chickens. And that's just a lot of chickens. So which one's the best option for you and your little flock? Well, let's look through 6 of the most popular feeding systems and 2 of the most popular watering systems and break it down. All right, the way I break this down is based on 7 different factors. The first factor is ease of use. I mean, you want a feeding system and a watering system that's easy, right? I know I do. The second factor is durability. If it doesn't last, it's not going to be a great option. You want something that's going to be able to last not only through the summer, but also the winter. Especially, like here in Utah, there's some extremes in temperatures. The third factor is what I call the mess factor. Is this something that's going to cause a big mess? Because if so, that's something you need to know about and be prepared for, because you're going to have to clean it up. The chickens won't do it. The fourth factor is what I call the pest factor. How likely is this system going to be to attract pests or rodents or bugs? Because that's something, again, that you need to know. Now, just because you don't have pests and bugs and other pesky things to worry about right now, it doesn't mean it's not going to have to be something you worry about in the future. This is something that you always need to think about, because depending on the pest that is involved, you're going to have to worry about different disease vectors and things like that. And these are things that could affect or even infect your flock or your family. The fifth factor is cost. I mean, how much is it going to cost you? And is it something you're going to have to replace parts on a regular basis? We want to know how much this is going to hit the bottom line or our budget. The sixth factor is only going to matter to you if you've got a shared pasture or you're getting other animals. For us, for example, this wasn't a factor as much until we added goats into the mix, because we've got chickens and goats sharing the same part of our backyard. The last factor is what I call the camping test. Is this something that has to be checked on a daily basis, or could you go camping and everything would still be fine? This is something that was important to me and my family because we love to go camping. But we also want to be top-notch animal owners, so we want to make sure that if we did go camping overnight, our animals would be just fine. Whether the person who checks in on them on time, or if they're a little bit late. I sat down and rated each of these 7 factors on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, because, well, I'm a star. And 1 star on my scale is the lowest score, with 5 stars being the highest. So let's see how they did. The gravity-fed mason jar scored a 3 on usability. It's usable. It's easy. It scored a 5 on durability. I mean, my kids have drop-kicked ours, and it still works just fine. As far as mess, though, scored a 1. It also scored a 1 for attracting pests. I mean, bugs will get in it if you don't clean it up on a regular basis. And for the camping test, the mason jar-sized feeder scored a 1. I mean, this thing's got to be filled up daily, if not more frequently. For cost, though, it scored a 5. And for a shared pasture situation, it scored a 2. For a trough feeder, it scored a 4 for usability and durability, but only a 1 in the messiness, pest attraction, and camping tests. It scored a 5 for cost because these things can be pretty cheap. They don't have to affect the budget too much. But for shareability of pastures, it's a 2. The goats can really get into it really easily. For a bucket feeder with an elbow joint pipe or entrance where the chickens can stick their heads in to eat it, scored a 4 in cost, usability, and the camping test, especially if you've got a bigger one. However, it did score a 1 in shareability of pastures and for attracting pests. However, it did score a 5 in durability. If you're going to feed your chickens by hand, it scored 5s in cost. I mean, your hand's free. Usability and durability. Again, your hand is pretty durable. However, it did score 2s in messiness, pest attraction, and it scored a 1 in camping because if your hand goes camping, there's nobody there to feed your chickens unless you get a neighbor to do it. The kind of feeder that we use is a gravity-fed feeder that has a dowel rod the chickens peck in order to get their food. So it's gravity-fed. It's by no means perfect, but it scored pretty well. It scored a 4 on shareability. It's pretty good. It works really well. The goats aren't able to get into it. It also scored a 4 in costs, usability, and pest attraction. There is some possibility of it attracting rodents in particular. Where it scored least was in mess. Depending on what kind of feed you use, it can cause quite a bit of a mess. To get less of a mess, I recommend you try using pellets instead of crumble. And it scored a 5 in durability and the camping test. I mean, I only have to fill the feeder once a week. That is a successful camping test. If you want to get a fancier feeder, like one of the ones with the treadle that the chicken walks on to open that advertises itself as being completely pest-free, here's how it rated. It got a 3 for shareability because the goats can open it. It got a 2 for cost because it's dang expensive. It got a 4 in both usability and mess potential because, well, as I learned from some other YouTube videos, that it's not completely mess-free no matter what it advertises. However, it did get a 5 in durability, pest attraction, and the camping test. Again, that's going to depend on what size you buy. For the biggest gravity-fed style feeders, these are the ones that are like super big, and you usually buy at the store. It scored a 3 in cost, shared pasturability, usability, and messiness factor. It scored a 4 in durability and a 2 on the camping test. But for pest attraction, it got a 1. Okay, how did the watering systems rate on this same scale? A mason jar gravity fed style watering system scored a 4 on shareability and cost. It scored a 3 on usability, a 1 on messiness, pest attraction, and the camping test, but it did get a 5 for durability. Again, these things can be drop kicked by your kids, your human kids, and they hold up really well. Just again, make sure you're getting the plastic ones and not the glass ones because I don't recommend drop kicking glass. If you're gonna get a 5-gallon bucket with a chicken watering nipple so that your chickens have on-demand access to clean water that has a cover, that kind of a system rated really well. Here's how it did. It got a 5 on cost, a 5 on shareability because the goats can't get into it, 4 on usability, a 5 on durability, and a 5 in messiness, pest attraction, and the camping test. I mean, these things are solid and they're going to be able to protect the water so that your chickens are doing just fine. There you have it. That's how each of these systems ranked when compared to each other. If you want to see how any of these particular systems did on an individual level, make sure you check out the associated video. And thanks for subscribing. It makes us all happy, the goats and chickens included.